If you've ever hired a sales rep that didn't work out, and let's be honest, most people have, this video is going to change the way you approach recruitment forever. And that's because the reason most reps fail has nothing to do with the actual rep themselves. More time, it has actually everything to do with the system and the process that you go through when you're recruiting, hiring that person. And so people either have no recruitment process, they don't have a true screening process, they don't have an onboarding pack, and a rep just gets thrown to the calendar with, a half written script and just hope that, that person closes some deals, which doesn't work more time than not. And then when they don't perform, what I see time and time again is the business owner blames the rep, fires them, goes and finds another one, and the cycle continues of the exact same thing, right? And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that I use to hire elite closers fast. And so that's the recruiting, screening, onboarding, and by the end of this video, you'll have a complete framework of which you can implement into your business straight away. Before I actually get into this system, right, I want to make something clear. Your sales team is the engine of your revenue. Right? It doesn't matter how good your offer is. It doesn't matter how much you spend on ads. If the person on the other end of the phone isn't converting, and all of that is ultimately wasted, right? Now, I've seen businesses with incredible offers, great leads, solid funnels, and they're doing half the revenue they should be just because the sales team is underperforming. And in almost every case, it comes back to the same three things. They recruited the wrong people, they didn't screen properly, and then they onboarded badly or just like not at all, right? And with this, we're gonna get all three of these right, and your revenue will ultimately just reflect its potential, right? So this system I'm about to explain fixes all three of those. Okay, let's start with recruiting. And I want to reframe how most people think about this. Most business owners post a job listing, get a flood of applications, pick someone who, sounds pretty decent on paper and just hopes for the best. That's not recruiting, that's hoping, right? So proper recruiting is about having the right relationships in the right places so that when you need a closer, you already have a pipeline of pre-vetted talent ready to go, right? For me personally, as all great sales managers should do, I constantly have reps on the go, and I'm constantly speaking to new reps, even if I'm not hiring. Just because I want a pipeline, I want to be speaking to new people, I want to have people ready to go at an instant when somebody comes to me and they're looking for a sales rep, or I need to hire for one of the teams or offers that I'm consulting / managing on. The three main sources I use are recruiters, sales managers, and then sales trainers / coaches, right? Recruiters who specialize in specifically just sales talent are worth their weight, right? They work with salespeople every day. They know who's performing, who's hungry, who's looking for a new opportunity. And if you build the right relationship with the right recruiter, they become one of the most reliable talent pipelines you ever have. Alongside this, sales managers are another underutilized source, right? Former or current sales managers that have spent years watching reps perform, they know who the A players are, who's been underpaid, who's been underutilized, whatever that looks like. And one conversation with the right sales manager can open up doors to closers that ultimately you'd never find on a job board. Sales trainers and coaches are the third, right? People who are actively training salespeople for a living and are constantly working with different talent, all at different skill levels. They know who's ready to step up. They know who's been, getting after, who's been improving. And because they've trained these people, they can vouch for their skill set in a way that most people couldn't. Here's the thing about all of these relationships, and this is the most important point in this entire section. These people will only send you their best talent if they trust you and if they respect you, right? That means two things. First, provide value. Share what's working, be generous with what you know, help them where you can. Relationships in business are built on providing value to each other, and the people who are transactional get transactional results, right? Second, and this is non-negotiable, you have to be honest about your offer, right? Do not overpromise on earnings. Don't undersell the difficulty of the offer. Don't set false expectations about the lead quality or the product, the commission structure, because the moment a rep gets on the phones and the reality doesn't match what they were told, they're gone, right? And the person who referred them never sends you another one again. So you have to be honest with these people about where the company is at so that either the coach, the sales manager, whatever that looks like, doesn't get pissed off because you ended up lying to them about the numbers on your company or your offer. The recruiters, the managers, and the trainers who send you talent, their reputation on the line, firstly, every time they make a referral. So respect that, be straight, and be real about what the role involves and what a rep can realistically earn, right? Do these two things consistently and you will build a reputation as someone worth working with. And when you need a closer, the phone call is fairly easy, right? The outcome of getting recruiting right is a consistent flow of pre-vetted talent, people who come in with context, with a recommendation behind them, and with realistic expectations set, right? That's the foundation. But recruiting just gets people in the door. The next stage is where you separate the right people from the wrong people. So that's, of course, screening, right? Screening is probably the most under-invested part of the hiring process. Most people have a single conversation, goes well, they like the person, and they bring them on. That's not screening, that's a vibe check, right? So proper screening is structured. It covers a number of distinct areas, and you can skip any of them. If you do so, you increase your risk of a bad hire a lot. Right. The 4 areas are background, psychology, validation, and commitment. So the first thing you need to do is you need to understand their track record, right? Specifically, how much cash have they collected? You know, how many calls have they taken? How many years have they been in sales, or months, whatever that looks like, and how much actual cash have they brought in for businesses. Cash collected is realistically one of the main metrics that matters. Someone can have 5 years of sales experience with a terrible close rate. Some can have 6 months of sales experience and be exceptional, and their cash collected numbers can reflect that. Then you want to know specifically, do they have setting experience? Do they have closing experience? And for how long have they done each, right? Because setting and closing are different skill sets. A great setter isn't automatically a great setter. Understanding their background in both tells you exactly what you're working with and what you'll need to develop. Psychology, right? So this is where most people spend the least amount of time, and it's one of the most important areas, and honestly where I spend the majority of my time on interviews. You want to understand what has been holding people back from them achieving their goals. What has stopped them from being where they want to be in their career and in their life? Listen very carefully to how they answer these questions, because how someone explains their own limitations to you tells you everything about how they'll perform on calls. If they make external excuses, the leads were bad, the offer wasn't good, the manager wasn't good, that's just a big red flag, right? Not necessarily a deal breaker on its own, but you got to note that, right? I hear it time and time again. I speak to new sales reps and they come on the phone and they tell me, I've had this bad experience and this wasn't good and these leads are bad. And every time I hear that, it's just stop talking. It actually does my head in. But anyway, salespeople who consistently blame external factors when things aren't working are very difficult to coach, and they're also very difficult to retain accountability with, right? What you want to hear is ownership. Someone who can say, here's where I fell short. Here's what I've worked on. Here's what I've learned. That's coachable. That's someone who grows, right? Beyond that, you want to get a feel for their hunger, their ambition, and whether they're going to be a culture fit. Are they genuinely excited? Are they asking good questions? Are they thinking about the long term or just the short term? Do they feel like someone who would fit with the team you're building, right? Culture fit matters more than most people realize. A rep who is technically skilled, but who doesn't fit the culture creates friction that ultimately costs you. Alongside that, validation, right? Background and psychology can tell you, a lot about someone's past, the mindset they have, etc., etc. But validation tells you about the actual skill set that they directly have, right? So do a mock call with them. Don't be afraid to do that, right? This is a non-negotiable more time than not, right? You cannot accurately assess a salesperson without hearing them, right? A mock call doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be like, 30 minutes. You can get a clear picture. Well, I can anyway, within 2 to 5 minutes, right? What you're looking for in that mock call is not whether they can follow your specific script perfectly. They don't know it yet, so that's going to be pretty impossible. Realistically, it's mainly just tonality, right? Does their voice carry conviction? Does it project confidence without being pushy? Tone is one of the hardest things to teach and one of the most important things in sales. And if the tone isn't there, that's a significant development change that you have to help that sales rep with. Active listening, very, very key. Are they actually hearing what the prospect is saying, which is going to be you because you're going to be doing that mock, or are they just waiting for their turn to talk, right? Great salespeople respond to what was just said. Average salespeople run through a script regardless of what the prospect tells them. Don't do that. Quality of questions. Are they asking questions that dig deeper, that uncover real pain, that don't just get the surface level, actually gets the bottom line per se? Or are they just, asking checkbox questions that don't really go anywhere? The quality of a salesperson questions tells you more about their potential than almost anything else. And if those 3 things aren't there, good tonality, strong listening, quality questions, you have something to work with. Everything else is quite trainable, but those fundamentals either exist or they don't. Don't get me wrong, skill set is one of the things where more time than not, if that person is eager, willing to learn, it can be taught. I would say that mindset is, probably one of the most important things, just important to know. The final piece of screening is getting a commitment up front, right? Ask them, this is what I do for every team or rep, whatever you want to call it, that I hire for. I ask them directly for a minimum of a 30-day commitment to the offer before making any judgment calls on whether it's right for them. Here's why this matters. Every new offer has a learning curve. The leads behave differently. The objections are different. The product knowledge takes time to internalize. The pace and the culture of the team takes time again to adjust to. Most reps who quit in the first few weeks do so before they've actually giving themselves a fair shot. A 30-day minimum commitment filters out people who are hopping from offer to offer, looking for a quick win. And off the back of that, the right people, the ones who are, serious about building something, they will not hesitate to commit to 30 days. Not at all. The ones who do hesitate are usually telling you something important about their reliability. Get through all 4 of those stages and you've done something most businesses never do. You've screened properly, right? The outcome is only serious, capable closers move forward, which means less time wasted, less bad hires, and much higher success rate on the reps that you ultimately bring in. Now we get to the part that I genuinely believe is where the most money is being lost across the entire industry overall, right? And that is the onboarding process. Most businesses have absolutely no onboarding process, genuinely none, right? The reps sign on and they get added to Slack. Someone sends them a script via a Google Doc and they told good luck, right? And then of course, when the rep naturally underperforms in the first 2 weeks, the business owner, sales manager, whatever that looks like, says the rep isn't good enough. Maybe that's true, but more often, the rep never had what they needed to succeed in the first place. And here's how I think about onboarding. Your job is to get a new closer to fully understand how your business works within 24 hours. Everything they need to perform at the highest level in one place that's accessible immediately. That means one centralized document, and I call it a closer workflow. What the closer workflow contains is absolutely everything that closer needs to succeed on your offer, right? So that is the script itself, that is product knowledge, going over the niche, the industry, etc., how the funnel works from ad to booked call, the payment links, previous successful call recordings or unsuccessful call recordings, real examples of what a great call ultimately on the software sounds like, any objection handling that's specific to the product, the commission structure, the KPIs they're held to, how to track their numbers, literally everything, one document, everything in it organized clearly so a new rep can come in, sit down, work through it literally within a few hours and come out the other side actually understanding the business that they're selling for, right? This is so key. This matters more than people realize because a rep who doesn't fully understand the product, the funnel, the customer will improvise. And improvisation in sales usually means weaker objection handling, weaker conviction, and just a lower close rate overall. Give them everything they need and they don't need to improvise. Once that closer workflow is built and the rep has gone through it, the next piece is the first week on calls. Do not put a brand new rep full blast, full calendar in the first week. Don't get me wrong, you can if you're very, very confident and they have a lot of experience, etc. Fair game. If you're trying to be cautious, don't do it. I can't tell you how often I see this. Business owners are excited to have a new rep. They want to maximize their, their output immediately. They want to fill their calendar from day one. And then the rep takes 10 calls, closes one of them, and the business owner decides that they're not good enough. A rep in 1 week is still adapting. They're learning how leads behave in the specific offer. They're finding the rhythm with the script. They're getting used to, the typical objections that come up on that specific offer. They're trying to organize their approach, their mindset, and how to speak to these people in real time. Putting them on what we call half calendar for the first week. Half the calls they'll eventually take. This does 2 things. Firstly, it eases them in so they can focus on quality over quantity while they're still learning, right? And it allows you or whoever is managing them to give high quality feedback on every single call. And so when a rep takes 5 or 6 calls in a day, you can review all of them, give detailed notes, identify patterns, and have a meaningful conversation about what's working and what to ultimately adjust. That feedback loop in the first week is everything, right? And it's the difference between a rep who figures things out, in 1 week and comes into sharp, right? Versus, of course, a rep who takes 20 calls with no feedback, develops bad habits, and that's much harder to correct later on down the line, as you could imagine. And maybe some of you have gone through it. Half calendar, first week, that is the go-to. The outcome of doing onboarding properly is you will get ultimately a confident, ramped closer in days, not weeks, which means your revenue has a bigger impact faster, you waste less time, and reps who actually have a chance to perform. Let's recap the full system. So recruiting is obviously you're building relationships with recruiters, sales managers, and trainers. You're providing value. You're being honest about your offer, and you build a reputation as someone worth working with. The outcome is a consistent pipeline of pre-vetted talent constantly. Screening. So you're covering all areas. You're covering their background, their cash collected, their setting and closing experience, their psychology, mindset, ownership. Are they externalizing things? Their hunger, culture fit, and then you're validating their skill set via a quick mock call. And so on that mock call, again, you're trying to field out for their tonality, how they listen and actively listen, and the quality of the questions that they ask. You're getting commitment, right? A minimum of 30 days on the offer. The outcome of this is, of course, you're only getting serious, capable closers that move forward and commit to that. And then onboarding is you build a closer workflow with everything they need in one place. It gives them the 24 hours they need to get fully up to speed. You put them on half calendar for 1 week, run a high feedback loop, and the outcome of that, again, is you get a confident ramp closer in days and not weeks with no bad habits. That's the system. And if you implement all 3 stages properly, your hit rate on new hires goes up significantly and your ramp time drops. Your team performs at a high level that directly impacts your revenue. Important for you guys to know, right? I've hired and onboarded closers across multiple businesses, multiple niche, multiple revenue levels, and the businesses that get this right consistently outperform the ones that don't. And that's not because they're spending more on leads or on ads, but because the people taking the calls are better prepared, they're better selected, and they are better supported. If you found this useful, drop a comment below and let me know what part of the process you're going to implement first. And if you want to see how we would apply this to your specific business, whether that's building a system from scratch or coming in to fix what's already there, the link is in the description, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.